Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Thank you so much, City Clerk. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, May 12th, special City Commission meeting regarding the beach reopening by teleconference to order, and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triola.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amorosa.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Thank you so much, City
Commissioner
Clerk.
Omari Hardy.
Tuesday, May 12th, special City Commission meeting
Commissioner
regarding
Herman
beach
Robinson.
reopening by teleconference.
Here. With the echo.
Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone would please rise for the pledge, led by the Vice Mayor.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We're going to move right on to our 2 items on the agenda for this evening. It is under new business, and item A is consideration of and request for official action regarding the reopening plan for the city's beach. City Manager, did you have a presentation, or Assistant City Manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Commissioners, I'm going to open just briefly, and then Assistant City Manager Juan Ruiz will do a brief presentation about the beach reopening plans.
Okay.
As you know, in response to changes in policy from both the governor's level down into the county commission through the county administrator, there are some changes in reopening up the state of Florida and specifically into Palm Beach County. The 2 items tonight reflect some of those shifts. And what we're really intent on doing here this evening is, with these 2 items, getting the commission's consideration and then direction to staff on how you want to proceed with these based on the actions that are being taken by the county. The first item that we're going to talk about tonight is the beach. And as you'll recall, last week, the county commission had a consideration of opening the beach, and they were actually considering having it open this last Monday. At the meeting, when the commission got together and listening to the input and having certain questions and considerations for their staff, they postponed it, and they're going to be reconsidering the issue again this coming Friday. And the possibility is that they may end up opening up the beach in some fashion on the following Monday or some other date, if at all. And again, I just want to stress, this is a decision that's being led by the county commission on behalf of the entire county. The cities and all the folks who are involved with beaches have been included in working groups through the county administrator. So concerns and issues that range the gamut from on the south end of our county. There's concern that if we open and Broward County doesn't, that folks will be flooding into the county to visit the beaches there, to the fact that on the north end, they're a little more relaxed because Martin County is pretty much open and they want to see their beaches open. And we're kind of somewhere in the middle, both geographically and in some of our concerns on how to operate our beach. So with that, I just want to stress again that this is an evolving process. This is not a definitive timeline at this point. I would tonight, if possible, after you've had your discussion, would like to receive some specific direction on how you want me to proceed with following what the county eventually will be doing with the beach opening. I also want you to appreciate that as this evolves, there will be restrictions, as we understand it, coming from the county on how the beach opening would proceed within the county. And with this particular issue, you can be more restrictive than the county's position, but you can't be less restrictive. So you have a lot of leeway here, and we want to answer your questions, your concerns, and have a good, healthy discussion about how you want to proceed with this. Staff has come up with a proposal, and I really want to thank Lauren Bennett, the Leisure Services Director, her team, many of who are on the meeting tonight, who take care of and love our beach on behalf of the residents and on behalf of you, and they do a wonderful job. And they've come into this very thoughtfully and respectfully on how to manage this true diamond of our park system, as well as Assistant City Manager Ruiz, who will be leading this presentation. And the intent of these suggestions is this proposal, this plan that we are putting out here would be to protect, obviously, the residents, the citizens, the beachgoers, our staff, as well as the business owners at the casino and beach facilities. So what I see is taking some kind of motion, Madam Mayor, to tell us if you want to open the beach and follow along with what the county is going to be putting out there, and then have some more clarifying sets of actions that would tell us what you think about this plan and what options you want to proceed with, and if there's anything else we need to be considering. I would hope that we would also get direction to send either a letter or myself or one of you to the next county commission meeting to express the city of Lake Worth Beach's position on the beach opening. So with that, Madam Mayor, I think we can either have a conversation about opening the beach or not, or we can go right into Mr. Ruiz's presentation on what a beach opening plan would look like for the
Well,
city of Lake Worth
it's
Beach.
something that we're going to be voting for in the end.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So then I'll need to entertain a motion to accept the item. To have a discussion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
I move, basically not to reopen the beach at this time.
Okay, is that, I just want to double check with the city manager or the city attorney. Do we have this item, it's not specific. Is there the,
Well, yeah, Madam Mayor, we didn't make it specific because we wanted to get as much discussion and direction from y'all on whether or not you want to open the beach and how that opening would look like.
and when?
And if you wanted to follow the county's lead on that.
Okay, so the official motion would have to be, we need a motion for consideration of the reopening plan for the city's beach, and that's the presentation that our assistant city manager is going to be doing.
Good.
Well,
That's the motion.
So move.
Okay, so Vice Mayor.
What does it mean?
All right, well, we had a motion on the floor first from Commissioner Hardy, and I didn't have a second. Is there a second? Motion failed. Back to the second. So we've got now. Well, that was so now we've got a motion from Commissioner Maxwell. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, did Commissioner Robinson second that?
I was trying to with the purpose of discussion, which
Which
a
will not
motion.
open discussion.
I'm sorry, we don't allow for discussion?
No, the motion that Commissioner Hardy's made will not allow for discussion.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Point of information, Ms. Godot. If I were to make a motion to deny the plan or to not approve of the, of the plan that was presented to us, and someone were to second that, we could still discuss the motion. Am I right, Ms. Godot?
Madam Mayor, may I respond?
Yes, please.
Yes, if that is the motion to not approve the plan as presented, then yes, that would allow for the discussion on the plan to occur. You could make the motion in the affirmative or in the negative.
Right. So I've made the motion in the negative, and it sounded like Herman was trying to second it.
Oh, City Attorney,
Yes, Madam Mayor?
under your direction, you say vote, official motion and vote based on the considerations of the reopening plan. So if that's how you're supposed to make a motion, then how would you make a motion to consider something if you, I'm confused as to the wording.
Well, I think the motion is for the purposes to start that conversation. Whether the motion is to approve the plan as presented or the motion is to deny the plan as presented, it starts that conversation.
Okay,
If ultimately,
we'll have to be careful on how we put the motion out though, just because the way it
Yes.
reads as if you can't even consider it.
right, I agree. And depending on how the discussion evolves, that may result in a proposed amendment to the motion, or if the motion is ultimately it doesn't prevail, then there would have to be another motion made of a different nature.
Okay, so then would the motion then be to allow for discussion of the city's beach reopening plan?
My motion was to disapprove of the plan to reopen as presented by the city. And if Herman seconds that,
I
we'll
understand that point. I just was
Yeah.
waiting for your motion. Thank you.
yeah, so my
Right.
motion is to disapprove.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
It's worthy of discussion.
I know, I'm waiting for the discussion. Thank you. All right, Assistant City Manager?
Madam Mayor, thank you. Commissioners, I hope we find everybody healthy and safe today. I'm
Did-
going to run through a
Did we
quick
call the
presentation.
question? Did we had a motion and a second? I can't hear you.
Yes, we did. It was the motion was made to disapprove the plan by Commissioner Hardy, and Commissioner Robinson seconded for discussion.
But did we have a vote?
No, we have to have a motion and second just to discuss it, because there will be a vote at the end.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Commissioner Robinson's second was not the same as the motion maker.
Well, he's going along with it. I guess he's made a personal comment outside of the parliamentarian comment of approving it just so that we could have a discussion.
And that's not personal. I thought that was parliamentary procedure to allow for discussion on any motion.
Oh, please. Then why would you have to ask for a second for discussion if that's the case?
Because there's going to be a vote on it. There will be a vote, and he's made the motion against the proposal. So let's just have our discussion and then we can continue on. Is that okay? Or do you have any more questions? I still have both of your hands up, Vice Mayor and Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
My hand's been up since 6:10, but I never got heard.
Okay, please go ahead.
I'll lower that.
No. You've got the floor, Vice Mayor.
No, we already have a motion, so we're moving forward.
Okay. Did you have something, Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, City Manager, for the beginning. It seems like it was 10 minutes ago. I also want to thank staff, Lauren Bennett, Captain Bear with Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, and Chief McCabe from Palm Beach County Fire, who participated and also provided input, along with Larry Lightfoot from our Parking Enforcement Manager, and Doug Yoakum, our Chief Lifeguard at the beach. So it's been a collaborative approach to identifying what we'll call today an informational presentation. And we'll take our time and go through it because of the beach property and the fact that there's a pending conversation in the county regarding beaches and beach parks versus what occurred last week in the executive order issued by the governor and subsequently modified for Palm Beach County. We'll call it the 25% business plan. There's also a commercial business component on that property that kind of makes us very unique, along with some of our neighboring jurisdictions that also have a commercial piece on their beach property. So the presentation can be somewhat confusing. So we'll take our time and go through it slide by slide, and we'll take it in chunks. And the first slide that I'm going to go to speaks specifically in reference to, we'll call it the beach business, the beach tenants. Nothing to do with the sand whatsoever, nothing to do with the beach park and the ability for the public to utilize that beach park for recreational activities. So as you guys are well aware, the governor issued the executive order 20-112. And in that executive order, it allowed for businesses to open at 24% of indoor capacity and offered some outdoor seating arrangements, obviously with practicing social distancing, the facial covering, and so forth. And I won't go into all the details. Everyone's probably had a copy of that executive order by now. what we've done at the beach, up until yesterday, we had been following along, dating back some weeks, where we were allowing for takeout and delivery services at the beach for our beach businesses. And that has not changed as of date. Yesterday, with the expectation and the excitement that our businesses shared along with the rest of the businesses in the county, there was some of an internal expectation that we would be opening up, the parking area, which obviously we were not prepared to do so leading up to this meeting tonight. We felt it was important that we seek further direction from the policy board. So what transpired yesterday was basically opening up and creating a few additional spaces on the top level to help facilitate more takeout, more delivery, and the potential for some of the businesses to have and implement the 25%, we'll call it 25% rule within their establishments, which was issued by the governor through the executive order. We didn't open or create any access to the beach park or the beach itself, or any parts, that we would deem, usable for recreational purposes. So basically the beach, it's still in the same condition as far as managing of the parking capacity. The bathrooms are still closed, so forth and so forth, as they have been up until yesterday. Some of the elements that we've been looking at is, the first slide is titled Phase 1 Beach Tenants, and it has some dates. Okay, Wednesday, May the 13th, Sunday, May 17th. And I do apologize, I've made some grammatical changes to my presentation. I'm hoping you guys can see this, but these dates are all subject to change. Again, this is an informational based presentation. It's really more about sharing information with you as a policy board. So to Mike's comment earlier, so we can seek some further direction at some point in time, whether tonight or next week, or whenever that may be. So moving on, and why you see 25%, and here was the rationale behind the 25% capacity, or the 25%, the use of the 25%. We were trying to find a consistent use of language as close as we could to the executive orders when we were implementing plans and as we're developing these plans. So there's some consistency across the board for the public to be able to understand kind of what they're walking into when they visit our property. So that even though the 25% is what was used in the executive order, we didn't exactly open up 25% of our parking capacity, okay? 93 spaces, which is currently open yesterday and today, is far short of the 25% mark. Moving on, if it is the policy board's desire to provide direction or approval after this presentation tonight, effectively tomorrow, we could open up several more parking spaces to facilitate the businesses conducting the 25% order that the governor's identified in their Phase 1 kind of reopening plan. And what you see on this aerial in the 25% that of the staff has identified basically is made up of all of the residential parking decal spaces, along with the top level and a few extra spaces behind the casino building. And the reason behind this approach was, obviously, our residents, your constituents are our priority, along with keeping staff safely. And we felt that the best approach to managing a phased approach was to allow our residents access first. And then slowly, as I go through this presentation, you'll notice there's different phases and different layers to how we approach this. And I do need to back up a couple steps. We have participated in numerous county task meetings, whether it's on the golf course conversation, the beaches, the businesses. Michael and I have been in meetings. It seems like every hour on the hours, 7 days a week. And how cities are approaching the beaches varies widely, all the way from the south end of the county with Boca, all the way to the north end in our northernmost jurisdiction in the county. Everyone's kind of at a different spot, and everyone has a different level of comfortability on what they're willing to do when the county decides to issue an executive order for the beaches. In the same fashion, beach parks with a commercial component, we all vary a little differently. And everything that is in this presentation comes from a phased approach. Our staff who have collaborated and who will have the duty of enforcing and overseeing this property all feel comfortable with a phased approach. That does not mean that as a policy board that you've made, different opinion and you want to, as they would say in some of these phone calls, rip the Band-Aid off. And, there's no perfect solution. They all have their pros and cons. And I'll leave that conversation for the policy board to go through, but I'll continue on with this presentation. So the initial kickoff for the 25% would be obviously focused on residential decal parking along with the top level, which gives us roughly about 182 parking spaces. All employees that work for the city and work for the tenants are going to be asked to park at Old Bridge Park, which is our employee parking lot, to allow for those spaces that do open up to be used to either to hopefully to visit the businesses that are open currently. Okay. Again, I'm trying to focus on the opening of the businesses and not the beach, because they're two different approaches, and I want to try to keep those separate. Moving forward, again, phase two. Now we start talking about, at some point, the businesses being open will cross paths with the beaches potentially being open under some sort of executive order. And again, all this information is subject to change. This is a kind of a jump off informational point that we felt comfortable bringing forward. And kind of a phase two approach. What would differ from the phase one approach is obviously we would open up more parking surface, potentially to 50%. If you reference the state reopening plan, again, it wasn't tailored toward Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County. Phase two kind of lands on the 50% capacity. So we're trying to mirror that language and that approach in our beach conversations, our beach logistic plans, as I'm showing you here. One thing that we were prepared to do is to really promote heavily the use of Park Mobile parking app. Again, it's a mitigation effort for us to try to keep our patrons and our visitors and our staff safe by having to minimize visits to the parking meters themselves and having to touch surfaces. But if we do have a plan in place to mitigate and providing a safe environment, when we get to the point where we're opening up more parking meters and making those more available. But we will be encouraging through all our communication platforms for encouraging people to sign up for Park Mobile. And that app is used by a lot of different jurisdictions. So once you load it on your phone, I think you can use it in West Palm and a couple other cities in the county and other counties as well. Again, it's a new way of doing business. It's been that service has been available since we've opened. And again, we'll make an emphasis to encourage that even more. Under this phase, which is really about the beach now, the beach and beach park opening, if the county commission decides, as they talked about Friday at the workshop, of opening on a target day of May 18th, then we would also open up the William O. Lockhart Pier. Again, that is operated and managed by Benny's through their master lease agreement with us. And we have been in conversation with Benny's to implement a safe manner of trying to open that pier and allowing that recreational amenity to come online. And as you can see in my comments, Lauren and her staff have been putting markers out kind of every 10 foot to try to, manage and have people spaced out so they're not all standing shoulder to shoulder. Maybe the bite won't be really good and they'll spread out along that pier. We are prepared to open the restrooms. We find that to be very important, that under any level of opening of the property for recreational amenities, whether the water is available or the water is not available to be used, that the city should be providing restrooms to the public as they visit the beach. Obviously, one big conversation that transpired at the county workshop was the issue of lifeguarding, and our chief participates in weekly calls with all the chiefs up and down the coast. He has a very close working relationship with Palm Beach County Ocean Rescue, obviously because we share property and we do a lot of mutual lifeguarding on the north end of our property where both properties kind of merge. Our initial phase one kind of that would mirror or be put in place with the opening of the beach park, we would be putting one lifeguard in the tower. Staff has created a kind of a fencing barrier that will be implemented. If you can see in the pictures, kind of a stanchion around the tower. So our lifeguards are protected. So when people who are visiting, and we're going to have some medical calls, we have to be realistic that if this thing gets opened up by under any regard, people are going to get stung or they're going to trip on something or, you know, cut a foot or whatever it might be. Our staff is prepared to deal with those medicals. Any medical emergencies of any significance, staff will be directed to call 911 and get Palm Beach County Fire Rescue on the call. And again, you know, as an example, you know, it could be a heart attack, you know, someone's having a seizure. Again, I don't want to get into great detail in our medical protocol, but we definitely, staff has been working hard with county and the other ocean rescue teams in identifying what this protocol is going to be. And the county's kind of been spearheading that conversation and been sharing information as that protocol comes kind of into focus. Again, all staff from the city perspective, we will continue to adhere to all the CDC and social distancing guidelines as expected. One thing that's not mentioned here, signage will be a very big part of this rollout. Lauren and her staff have already created posters, A-frame signs that will be put out throughout the property, reinforcing once again, you know, the use of facial coverings, the 6-foot social distancing, you know, and all those different mitigation guidelines that are out there floating around. And again, these dates are subject to change. This presentation was put together mostly last week ahead of the county workshop. And again, to Michael's comments, come Friday, there could be a delay. I don't think there's any guarantees. I think a lot of people have kind of stuck their flag on the calendar of May 18th. But again, I think it's a healthy conversation that they're having at the county level. It'll be a healthy conversation that we continue to have here at the city level. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they move the marker on that date. And if they don't, they decide to open, then, you know, we're prepared to initiate a plan if that's the will of the policy board to approve our plan as presented to you guys. And of course, I'll allow for some input, some feedback. I'm sure we have plenty of questions here at the end. Moving forward, again, like I said earlier, we would just start to expand as the phases are initiated or as they are identified in executive orders. And basically what we did is we pushed some rows going westward on the lower lot. So the first phase, most of this was oranged out. As you'll see in the next couple of slides, this orange starts to disappear towards the west, keeping the beach decal, residential decal parking spaces obviously open through all the phases in the top lot. Moving on, sorry, I went the wrong direction. Phase 2 beach tenants, again, as far as when it comes to the business community or the business component of the property, it has been our marching orders to follow the county executive order. So when the county decides to move to quote unquote another phase of their executive order 112, we'll say maybe they go to 50% in a week's time, 2 weeks time, then we will follow suit. And of course, obviously, all the other pieces that are in place will come along. Moving on to phase 3. Again, this would be another phase. Maybe it's in several weeks from the time that beaches are opened, if the county decides to go as a phase approach. If the county decides to go rip the Band-Aid off approach, again, we can come back as a city and you have the ability as our policy board to implement further restrictions above their baseline minimum. And again, phase 3, for the sake of consistency with the state plan, we open up more parking capacity. And the difference here is we actually bring in one more guard. We all station a lifeguard outside the tower, one inside the tower with frequent shift rotations, as we inch closer to kind of quote unquote normal operations. Moving on, phase 3, again, it's really at the lead of the county issuing executive orders that cover the business community. So I want to make sure we try to keep the two conversations separate. And again, like I said earlier, they will cross paths where they're both kind of at the same stage. And I think that's really about, stage 4, which is really normal. Moving on. Sorry, I keep going backwards. I'm sorry on my mouse. And then phase 4 again is basically resume normal operations. And when that date is, I don't think anyone can reasonably estimate when that is. It could be sometime in June, July, August. It's no secret. There have been examples of municipalities throughout the state that opened under some sort of phase. And then, the weekend went by and now they're making modifications to their plans. And some of those modifications have ranged widely from just shutting down completely to almost going to a morning and afternoon session where the properties are open twice a day. I wouldn't encourage that on our end. That would be very difficult for staffing logistic wise to create 2 sessions. But again, if that's the wish of the policy board, we're all ears. We will implement whatever the wish is. And as far as the logistics go on implementing a plan. And really quick, if I can get this to, my staff will not be happy if I don't get this to play. Keith, can you help me out here technically? The player, oh, there it goes.
Your favorite beach?
Lake Worth Beach.
Wonderful. That's my hometown beach.
All right, so we thought we'd slide that in there. I thought that was pretty cool of one of our residents speaking there, and of course we had to take advantage of the plug there for Lake Worth Beach being her favorite.
Yay!
We can all share those sentiments with her and our mother. So this ends basically the presentation on the beach businesses and the beach park. And when I say the beach park, the assumption is that includes the sand. I'm open for any questions that you may have. And that's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, can we return to the full screen?
Do I unshare here, Keith? Or Keith's got me.
Thank you, so I can see the screen. Commissioner Hardy? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Sorry about that. I just had a few questions about the math and the numbers before we get into our deliberations. So I'm looking at the capacity 25, 50%, and you specify the number of spots next to each. And I'm wondering, I just want to make sure, what's the total number of spaces at the beach?
725 total.
720. Are we including Old Bridge Park?
I don't believe so. No, that's 725 on this side of Federal Highway. Old Bridge Park is over the top. Old Bridge Park provides an additional 107. So
okay.
We're pushing close to 900 parking spots, and that doesn't include. Keep in mind Chrysler Park. So, and one important detail to remember is in your considerations of, let's say, not mirroring the county's first move on their beach. We share common interests, and there's spaces over on that side. I'm not quite sure. Maybe 200 and change. So that's one little logistical deal we'd have to overcome.
Oh, and thank you for noting that. So how many did you say are at Old Bridge Park again?
107.
About 107, okay, and maybe 200-ish spots.
At Chrysler, yeah, don't hold me to that. I want to say they pushed 200. Larry Lightfoot's on here. He's listening in. He may know the exact.
Larry, can you hear us? Larry?
I'm working on it.
There you go. We can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, yes. There's about 107, 108 in Old Bridge Park.
Okay.
That actual number is about 725, includes Old Bridge Park. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Help.
All right. So let me just make sure I get that right. So basically we got 725 of our spots east of A1A and also at Old Bridge Park.
That total.
And that doesn't include Chrysler.
No, they have about 145 spaces in there.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Total
So,
separate space.
okay. So when I hear and when I see in the present, because I was just trying to make the numbers work. When I see, for example, saying, you know, that we're at 25% capacity would be the first step as far as parking spaces. Are we talking about 25% of the parking spaces not including Old Bridge Park? Or are we talking about 25% of the parking spaces including Old Bridge Park? I just want to get clear about
I'll
that.
take that, Larry. Larry, I got it. Go ahead and mute it. Larry, Commissioner Hardy, to answer your question, Old Bridge Park, through the first 3 phases, until we get the normal operations, will be used for employee parking.
Only?
Only.
Okay.
Because the goal is to maximize the parking spaces at the beach property for the patrons that are there to visit the businesses and or, you know, recreate if we get to that point. And again, I prefaced earlier, the 25% parking capacity, even though the figure, it's dialed in to what we've identified, we're not married to it. Again, we were just trying to find consistency in the language for the public to kind of have an understanding and expectation when they come to the property, and trying to mirror as closely as we could what the number that's used in the executive orders that govern the businesses opening at 25% capacity.
Okay. So again, when you say 25%, you mean 25% of our spaces excluding Old Bridge Park. So, you know, 725 minus 107 is around 618.
Yes.
So about 25% of that number.
Leave Old Bridge Park on the right-hand side of the slide. It's
Right.
50 residential decal spaces and 132 public spaces for a total of 182. That's
Okay.
25% of the available parking capacity on the property, excluding Old Bridge Park.
Okay. So, okay. The reason why I asked is because just the numbers weren't making sense to me, because the first thing that I saw, for example, was, you know, we went from 180 or like, you know, 182 at 25% capacity, you know, to around, you know,
We went to 350.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's not an exact 2550.
As I said in the
Okay.
beginning of the presentation, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, plus or minus, it's not an exact science.
Okay.
We can get it to the exact percentage, but again, we were trying to keep consistent with the language being used in the executive orders and being used in the state reopening plan that was issued, you know, by the Department of Agriculture, I think it was, you know, I think the other day. So and again, we can clean that up. This is really for informational jump off point for us to have these conversations.
Okay. All right. So look, you know, here's my, and you know, I don't know if anybody else has questions, but I'm ready to, I guess, kind of say how I feel about this if we're deliberating at this point.
Well, let's hold on and see if anyone else has any more questions. Anyone else, Vice Mayor? No? All right, Commissioner Robinson? You seconded the motion. Do you have something to say? You're muted.
Where am I at here?
There you go. Now you're muted again.
Not in terms of parking.
Not in terms of parking. Okay, that's the item. Okay.
Well, only for the residence decal, but that's not pertinent to opening, so.
Okay. All right, then we've got a motion on the floor and.
Hold on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Pardon?
I've asked my questions. I just haven't said how I felt about it. I just want to make sure everybody
Okay.
had a
Just
chance
raise
to
your
ask.
hand if you can, okay? Because it's harder to see it on this and rather than yelling out. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah. So look, here's my concern. Okay. The first thing is, while we believe that there is less risk of contracting or transmitting the virus outdoors, we're still unable to say what the risk really is. You know, I mean, so we can say that there's less risk, but we don't really know what the risk is. I can say that Shaq is shorter than Yao Ming, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Shaq isn't a very tall guy. And, you know, there's a lot that we don't know about the virus. And I don't see a need to take additional risk when the benefit that you're getting in exchange for that risk is it just doesn't compensate you for what you're risking here. And I get that folks are getting stir crazy. I get that folks want to go outside and enjoy the sun, but you don't need to go to the beach, frankly, to enjoy the sun. You can take a walk around the block. You can take a walk down the street. Our other parks are open at this time. The beach is a very unique draw. And it's a draw not only to the people in our community, it's a draw to the people outside our community. You know, every community in Palm Beach County at this point pretty much has their parks open. Same for the Miami metropolitan area, which we're a part of, you know, which is, you know, coastal tri-county area here in South Florida. But not every place has a beach, and not every place that has a beach has an open beach. And we already know that we get 1 million visitors a year at our beach. I think that the demand for you know, folks going there is going to be outrageous. And you can limit parking capacity, but then you turn it into, you know, just a nightmare with folks coming in there and coming out of there and realizing that they can't park and going to wherever it is that they came from, or not, right? Or parking on this side of the bridge at a Bryant Park, or parking on this side of the bridge elsewhere in our community and just lugging their stuff across the bridge, which people do anyway. When they're not as stir crazy as they are right now. And so, you know, I think that the beach is a unique draw. I think folks from our community and from outside our community are going to flock there. Cars aren't the only, you know, limiting cars doesn't necessarily limit the human beings there. There's a bus at the beach, you know, that goes to the beach, and fares are free right now. And folks can just park on this side of the beach and you know, go over. The other thing is, I consider this reopening of the beach a, you know, I know we're considering it separate from phase 1 reopening, which we'll be discussing at the next item, but this is kind of in the spirit of a phase 1 reopening, right? And when I look at the criteria for phase 1 reopening, you know, it's a 3-legged stool. It's, you know, fewer documented cases, fewer hospitalizations, or excuse me, fewer folks presenting flu-like illnesses, and it's capacity at hospitals to treat folks and robust testing at hospitals. First of all, we don't know. None of us are in a position here, unless I'm, you know, aware, you know, unless, you know, someone wants to inform me. You know, we're not necessarily informed as to how robust testing is among hospital officials, right? They're supposed to be tested very, very frequently. We don't know how robust that testing is for them. So we don't know if that criteria is met. In addition to that, you can just go on the state's website and you can see that cases in Palm Beach County have spiked over the past week and a half. And I get that testing has increased, but the test positivity rate, again, over the past week or so has been flat and cases are spiking. So it's not as if we have the virus on the retreat here. It looks like we're kind of in a stalemate, and it looks like we are moving quickly, more rapidly than even the White House's own criteria would suggest that we should, to resume the activities that could potentially lead to this virus spreading. So again, this seems to me to be risk without much benefit. It seems to me that because we're in a large metro area, folks from all over this county and folks from other counties who know that we're reopening our beaches can come here and visit our beach, and they might not come by car. And in addition to that, I don't think that we've met the criteria to begin thinking about things like this. Our cases are increasing, not decreasing. The test positivity rate, which decreased initially, is now flat, and we're not in a position to verify for ourselves the extent to which robust testing among hospital workers, from physicians to janitors, is occurring. And so, I cannot support reopening the beach at this time as much as I would like it to be open.
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not support this motion. I think we all need to be sync with the county and with the governor to move forward, so we're all on the same page. I support sending a letter to the county, supporting them opening the beaches and moving forward with phase 1 this following Monday, the 18th. I want to thank our lifeguards, the chief, Lauren's staff, the parking division, and Juan and his staff for bringing forward this information. I trust that our lifeguards, PBSO, can move forward in a healthy and safe way. And I'm concerned that if the county opens Kershler Park, and we do not, there's going to be more issues with people trying, they don't know where the beach ends and their beach starts. I think it can open more cans of worms and have more issues there. So I do not support this motion. I support getting things back open.
City Clerk? City Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Do we have public comment cards?
We do. We have 2 comment cards on this item.
Okay, hold on one second. Commissioner Robinson, you had your
Yes.
hand up first, and
Yes,
then we'll
I
go to
do.
public comment.
Yes, thank you. Couple things. The county mentioned residence requirements of some sort. Are we going to try to regulate that? Is that even legal?
Madam Mayor, if I may, I can answer Commissioner Robinson's question.
Yes, thank you.
There is no indication as of today that would be a element part of the executive order that the county may issue. It's one of many concepts being floated out there. It's a very copycat world, and with Martin County putting that in place, it was very easy to see why other counties would put that on the table for consideration. But the legality of that is being explored by the county attorneys. So as of right now, we don't know that to be part of the executive order. We haven't even seen a draft just quite yet that's in any completed form. Tomorrow we're participating on the county beach task phone call, and I do anticipate that we'll get some sort of an update and an indication of kind of where the train of thought is going leading into Friday's county follow-up workshop.
So we'll have to assume that Martin did it and exercised that requirement, right?
I'm not an attorney, Commissioner Robinson, but I wouldn't assume, because every jurisdiction is a little different, and every property, some beach properties may have federal grants, may have local grants that stipulate that you can't, differentiate between county lines. The beach itself doesn't allow us to charge resident, non-resident as a perfect example.
Right.
So I would think it would be premature for us to think that that was coming. But it shouldn't surprise us, but I wouldn't make that assumption just yet.
Well, I just want to make sure that the county understands that our park, our oceanfront park is a regional park, and we're going to be overwhelmed by county residents. I appreciate their funding for the improvements so far, but if there's any funding or any ability to collect the expenses, I want to make sure that we make every effort to put pressure on the county to get the recognition of our park, our oceanfront park, as part of the county's recreational area, and they need to pay for some of that. The other thing was well, I this personal response. I'm sorry to say that I think that it's time to start phase in approach to getting back to normal. So I'm in favor of a phased in approach to opening our oceanfront park. I cannot stress enough that this is an exercise in personal responsibility for all the citizens, and it's on them. If they don't recognize the risks by now, they've been living under a rock. When they are foolish enough to congregate and not wear masks, it's on them. But the fact that they're doing it on our property, we need to be more than cautious. My concern is, when are we going to talk about the response to people not exercising personal responsibility? Are we going to give the city manager the ability to close the beach within 6 hours of being swamped by county residents, state residents? Because Naples had people from Miami. That I don't know when we're going to talk about that, but I think it's at some point this evening. I want to be able to stop this phased in if it's endangering to excess people's behavior.
Assistant City Manager, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may. Commissioner Robinson, and I should have mentioned
Herman's good.
Earlier. It's been some time. I'm sorry. Mentioned this early in the plan. Part of any phase that we do, we'll start with phase one. We'll include an MOT that includes signage and signage boards that will be placed on both sides of Lake Worth Bridge that will be monitored to basically say lot full. And once we reach that capacity, as cars are coming and going, and there's parking available, we will turn those message boards on and off. Part of this phase, there's a commitment that it's going to require active parking enforcement. We don't get the luxury of identifying a phase one approach and putting things in print and then walking away from the environment and doing the hand-to-hand logistics on the days that we're open. So active enforcement, active signage will have to be part of it until the patrons and those visiting kind of get used to the new normal for now as we go through these phases. So I'm sure there'll be some bent up excitement to get out, and it'll kind of get back into some normalcy. Maybe it'll rain, maybe it won't. Hurricane season's knocking on our door. By the way, there's a little disturbance kicked up, yay, that we get to look at, while dealing with COVID-19. But again, signage and MOT is critical in trying to avoid what we call holiday gridlock, which we've experienced on Memorial Day, 4th of July. You guys have all been there. We've all seen it. But we have a lot of faith in Larry Lightfoot, our parking manager, and our team there to implement something and run a smooth operation. Is it going to feel overwhelming? Are people going to be walking over and riding their bikes? Sure. But not just anybody's going to walk over that bridge to get to that beach. But you know, we're prepared to manage whatever it is the policy board identifies in a phased approach or non-phased approach.
So as long as I understand, we're opening up the sand. Are we opening up swimming in the ocean?
Again, Madam Mayor,
Yes, please.
those questions will all be predicated on the issuance of the executive order by the county. And once we receive that executive order by the county, then we can evaluate it. And if so choose, you as a policy board can become more restrictive than that. Again, we left out those specifics out of this informational jump off presentation because we don't know. I could layer over 100 scenarios and we could spend all night, doing that.
Is that going to be on the agenda then for Tuesday night after their Friday and Monday meeting?
Well, going back to
I think a decision on this is eminent and important, and we need to stop putting off nasty decisions.
well, I would to answer your question there, and I think the city manager mentioned it earlier, in the ask as far as a motion would be that the policy board could issue direction to implement the county executive order on beach reopenings as presented, or the direction may be to the city manager and myself to bring back the executive order once it's issued for further conversation. You still hold that ability in your motion or in a motion to do so. And again, whether the water's open or not open, it has varied widely from city to city to city. And I fully anticipate, and I could be wrong, that not every jurisdiction will be won't be sitting on the same base when it's time for the first pitch to be handed out.
Well, then can we establish, I want to establish to the public that there will be consequences, immediate consequences, because the county's going to be making decisions on Friday and Monday. Are we going to establish a policy tonight that there will be consequences, immediate consequences, if there is not personal responsibility practiced? Because or are we going to have a special meeting at noon on Tuesday if Monday doesn't work out? I just think this is an immediate enough response from the public to warrant us staying ahead of their expected behavior.
City Clerk? You have public comments?
I do, Madam Mayor. The first comment on this item, Wes Blackman, 241 Columbia Drive. Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, I urge you not to open up the City Beach Park past Phase 1 as outlined in the PowerPoint presentation available before the meeting. Lake Worth Beach is part of a metropolitan area that contains 6.1 million people. 75% of those people live in Miami-Dade and Broward counties, which are still not under a Phase 1 reopening plan. Their beaches are not open to the public. That population is within an hour and a half or shorter drive to Lake Worth Beach. I understand that the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners voted to reopen beaches as of May 18th with certain restrictions. This allows Palm Beach County residents only. I would like to know how the residency of potential Lake Worth Beach visitors will be determined. It is difficult to envision a scenario that would not involve the creation of traffic queues while IDs are checked. What do you do if you have a car with one person from Palm Beach County and 3 from other locations? We are still early in experiencing what the results will be from this reopening on infection rates. Phase 2 would open up public restrooms. Does the city have the capability to clean and monitor those restrooms so they don't become sources of new infection? In short, for the foreseeable future, I do not progress past phase 1 of this beach reopening plan. Thank you. Better safe than sorry. Then Diane Skoglund of 318 North L Street writes, there are already many infractions of social distancing order that has been established for restaurants. These are groups of people gathered by the restaurants without masks or social distancing. There are people sitting together closer than 6 feet at tables at the restaurants. The tables at the restaurants are not set to keep within the established guidelines. So how is the city planning to monitor the situation constantly to keep the residents safe? It is not the responsibility of the residents themselves to monitor and patrol the areas. That's the end of our comments on this item, Madam Mayor.
Was that item for item B or?
It was for
Okay.
item A. She specifically checked off item A.
Item A, okay.
Mhm.
City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the request specifically from Commissioner Robinson, if there's additional things or restrictions which would be more restricted than maybe what the county would eventually do in their administrative order. Now would be the time to give staff some direction, maybe to and up to and including that discussion and direction that for one of the phases, possibly we wouldn't have anybody in the water. That's a conversation that I'd prefer you do instead of having us come back and do an emergency meeting the night of the county commission's decision and kind of confuse things, because it's difficult to the way these things happen. There's not a lot of lead time sometimes, as we've just recently experienced. Also, Captain Bayer is on the phone, and as our police department, District 14 with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, will bear some of the responsibility on enforcement of some of these types of activities. And I don't know if he has any comments to add, if there is consideration of being more restrictive or worrying about those kinds of activities. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Yes. If Captain Bear wants to speak, he can speak. I imagine, given that we've recently seen a spike in crime here locally, even as our deputies are not allowed to take sick time, vacation time, and even as we have a full complement of deputies on each shift, I imagine that the priority would be to police the city and to protect people's lives and properties in the neighborhoods where they live. And I can only imagine that opening the beach with these restrictions, which are necessary if you're going to open the beach, whether it's a restriction on, exercise only, or not getting in the water, or social distancing of 6 to 10 feet or more, who would be enforcing those but PBSO? You would have lifeguards do this. They're not equipped to do this. They're not trained to enforce social distancing. They don't have the ability to protect themselves in the event that someone were to get physically aggressive with them. I am concerned about how we could ourselves enforce social distancing at the beach, because we're responsible for what happens there. In addition to that, there were some comments made. The first was that we all need to be on the same page as the governor and as Palm Beach County. It's my personality, but it's my belief here that the most important thing is not to be on the same page with anyone. Rather, it's to be on the right page. And that could require being on a different page from folks around us who we respect and admire, who are making decisions, who are, elected as, we are elected. I think that the county is moving too fast on this. Not only on beaches, but also on phase 1 reopening. I think the data is ambiguous at best as to whether it is a wise thing to do. And I think what's really happening here, you have wealthy people on both sides of the county, north and south, who wield a great deal of political influence and clout, and they are loud. And you have, basically and, with all due respect to everyone on that commission, I think that they are responding too readily to this vocal and influential minority. And so I believe them to be on the wrong page. And I think that if we were to be on the same page as them, we'd be on the wrong page too. And that, I think, is the most important thing. And this is critical. I think saying that we need to be on the same page as other people sidesteps the fundamental analysis that needs to happen here. Are we ready? I did not hear Commissioner Amoroso say we were ready. The only thing I heard from the commissioner was that he wants the city to conform. And frankly, that's not in my personality, but frankly, I don't think that's what we need right now. We need to do analysis based on the data available. The other thing is, and Commissioner Robinson was correct. He said that we need personal responsibility, but this is one of the rare cases where a lack of personal responsibility can create public liability, right? So when someone doesn't adhere to the social distancing guidelines, when folks don't wear masks, as they are not now in Publix and in the other places throughout the city, despite our encouragement, when they don't do these things, they do lack personal responsibility. But it's not just on them. They create liability not only for themselves, but for those around them and for those around the folks who are around them. It's not the virus that moves, it's people that moves, right? And so, I don't want to put our city and to put society generally in a situation where many people can be harmed by the carelessness of a few who don't take this seriously, and there's the potential for that to occur. And it makes me very nervous, and to talk about the disproportionate impact that this virus has had on people who are always forgotten, the elderly, the African American community, folks with pre-existing conditions. If there is a flare-up, and none of us can say here that this will 100%, that we're 100% sure that this is going to work out. We can't even say, frankly, that we're more sure it's going to work out than less, because we don't know what the probabilities are here of contracting or transmitting the virus at a given concentration of aerosols or droplets, right? We just know that they're lower when you're outside and that they're higher when you're in a climate controlled environment. That's it. But we don't know that this isn't going to work out poorly. If it does, it's going to work out most poorly for people who are elderly, for people who are African American, for people with pre-existing conditions, for people who are essential workers, for people who are uninsured. And by the way, we have a 28% poverty rate, a tremendous undocumented population. The majority of our city is not Caucasian. Many of the members of our city probably don't have insurance, very working class. It's going to hit them very hard. And the last
point of information, are we still discussing the beach?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Okay, are we going to say the same things for the next item too, or have we said them here?
Well, it depends on where the conversation goes for the next item. The other thing is, to what extent, and this is a legal question, if the county chooses to open its beaches, are we, and Christy, when I say this, I'm asking, where is it written that we have to open that gate at the beach that allows for people to enter through the main way there? Where is that written? Do we have to open our beach if Chrysler Park is open? Or if the county decides to open its beach, do we have to allow access in a way that's different from how we're allowing right now?
Madam Mayor,
yes.
may I respond? Thank you. Commissioner Hardy, I think we're obviously in uncharted territory, because this isn't an issue that's been addressed either through the Attorney General's office or case law. But when you look at the emergency powers that are being executed by both the governor and Palm Beach County, you have to look to Chapter 252 of the Florida statutes. And in 252, my read of it is in subsection 38. It really talks about that in each county, there is an emergency management agency that's set up by the county. That county agency then has, per that section, jurisdiction over the entire county. So the argument would be that if the county issues an executive order that reopens the beach, the city, falling within the jurisdiction of that county, would have to follow that executive order. Now, that opinion is tempered by the fact that obviously the city owns its beach, and the city has the power to open and close its beaches regardless of an emergency.
Correct.
So we do have, I believe, the ability to do some stricter things than fully opening with the county. But again, let me just repeat, this is not an area where there's a lot of authority to be found on it that discusses how this is supposed to flow and really what the chain of command is.
Right.
I think the bigger issue the city is going to struggle with, rather than this legal issue, is the logistics of all of this.
Right. Which again concerns me, because a lot of folks don't know that Chrysler Park is not our park. A lot of folks, and even I did, until after I had lived here and gotten involved in city government, I learned that there's a strip of beach that belongs to the county in between our beach and the beach that's owned by whatever hotel that is to the north of us, right? And so, you know, let's say that we were to decide, okay, to close our beach entirely, you'd still have 200 parking spots in Chrysler Park. And those folks are not just going to stay in front of where those parking spots are. They might wander into our area. So when we're talking about 25% of our beach, we have to do that understanding that folks from the other beach that's really a part of the whole area might be doing this. And it just gives me a lot of concern. And, you know, I'm wondering if we can keep the whole thing closed. And, you know, they can say that their beaches are open, but I don't know that we have to provide access through our, you know, parts of the beach that we own to their part of the beach that we, and they would have some things to say, but they'd have to take us to court or whatever, you know. It's not, you know, what are they going to do? Bring a, you know, someone with bolt cutters to unlock our gate? You know, I mean, that's anyway, I am concerned. You know, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
This is risk without reward. If folks want to get sun, they can do it in front of their house.
All right, Vice Mayor.
You're
Ms. Shank,
muted.
You're muted. There you go. Wait, you're still muted. There you go.
Am I good?
Yep.
Okay, so since Commissioner Hardy wants to hear me say, I think we're ready, I'm not interested in getting in a fight with the county. When I said it was important for us all to be on the same page, Commissioner Hardy made my case for me as far as Chrysler Park being open and our beach not being open. I think it's going to be very hard to police. You're walking down the beach and then all of a sudden, you know, somebody can't pass because it's Lake Worth Beach. Also, we have the same issue on the other end with South Palm Beach. A couple other things that came up, lifeguards, policing. Lifeguards police the beach every day. And when they have an issue that is out of their control, they call PBSO. I believe that just like a lifeguard calls somebody out of the water when there's a shark or a man of war or undertow, they can do the same thing with distancing. I walk every night down to Bryant Park and over to the beach. And I find that, you know, people are wearing their masks in the park, stopping in the bathroom. Thank you, staff. The bathrooms are very clean. So I think that, you know, staff can take care of that, and or our cleaning company. I find it hard to open a beach and not allow people to swim. And then the last one I had was, again, going back to PBSO. PBSO polices our beach when needed. They do regular drive-bys. They police our downtown. When the lifeguards have issues, police step in. That's an everyday occurrence. And I've also noticed downtown with merchants that people are getting too close. PBSO has come through on the loudspeaker and told them that this is takeout. You cannot sit in these tables. You need to move and take it home. So I think it can happen, and I look forward to moving forward.
Okay, speaking of PBSO, Captain Barry, you've had your hand up for a while, sorry.
Hey, good evening, everybody. How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. We've been talking about the beach for a couple of weeks now. Myself, the city manager, the assistant city manager, we are all on the county beach reopening committee. So we're well represented at that table. I'm one of the 4 law enforcement captains from PBSO on that task, on that committee. What we've been asking for on our side in these meetings is consistency in the regulations, whatever we
Thank you.
impose. Consistency as a county, if possible. As stated, you can make your restrictions more, but not less than what the county comes up with. And we keep asking, please, look at this from a deputy's eyes. What, is it understandable? Is it enforceable? Is it reasonable? And the same thing from a citizen's eyes. Is it understandable and reasonable? You use the example of swimming. If the rest of the beaches are swimming and, this beach doesn't allow swimming, you're gonna have people jumping in cruiser. We're gonna be getting calls once the lifeguards reach out to us. So we're just looking for, consistency, enforceability, and understandability. What hasn't come up either is that we've mentioned thus far in the committee meetings is what Jacksonville and many of the other beaches have gone to at this point is the active use only, where there is no sunbathing. It's walking, running, swimming, fishing, surfing. There's no blankets, umbrellas, beach chairs, no grilling out. I'm hoping that helps somewhat with Dade and Broward not opening at this time. It's a long drive to come up just to do any of those active activities as opposed to having, an all-day cookout at the beach. I'm hoping that keeps some of those numbers down and we don't have any issues like I've heard in Naples. From what I understand up in Jacksonville and other locations, I think no matter when we do this and no matter the best plans we have, it's going to be a little hectic for a few days to a week until the novelty wears off and then it'll settle down. From what we understand, that's what happened in Jacksonville and some of the other areas. There's other things in mind, opening on a weekday, obviously, as opposed to a weekend. And we do have a holiday coming up in the real near future, a holiday weekend, which is traditionally a beach weekend. Once I got this from the city, we do have a plan in place within the district. We have extra staffing available each of the days and especially on that holiday weekend. And a lot of it is going to be contingent on the weather. But we are as ready as we can be. And we are fortunate that right now with no leave time or training time, we're going out fully staffed each day. So that's also going to help. And then the agency has a plan throughout the county with all the other county beaches, city beaches. So with that, I'm here for any questions.
Commissioner Robinson? Your mic is on. Your mic, your mute. There you go.
All right. So I'm hoping that we come to a direction for city manager to take steps to in response to being overwhelmed at the beach. I think we're meeting tonight and talking about opening. I want the public to understand that there'll be consequences, and I think we need to establish that tonight, that he will have direction to take steps, whatever we decide. But I think if we're talking about opening, I think we ought to talk about the consequences of enforcement. We're laying this on PBSO, and the statistics for Lake Worth weren't good, and we don't need to give them any more of issues to enforce monitoring. And I was talking to the recreation department. isn't doing a whole lot of recreating, they can participate in monitoring the beach opening. And it seemed that it would be easier to let people swim than tell them they can't swim. If we're going to open the beach, swimming would be part of that. The only concession that is going to be affected is the cabana operation if we don't allow sunbathing. So this is a war that we haven't won yet, and we're starting to celebrate. You know, it only took one person in South Korea to infect 50 people in one night. It's, you know, we have to take personal responsibility. Thank
Okay.
you.
Assistant City Manager, is your hand still up from before, or did you raise it again?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to share a couple of bits of information. I appreciate Commissioner Hardy's questions. In some of his statements a few minutes ago. In the idea of not opening the county, you know, the gate, but therefore restricting access. The gate is already open. When we opened that gate to allow for parking, the use of parking the last 2 days to facilitate business at Benny's, Kilwins, Mamma Mia's, and Barry's, you know, that gate's open. And to try to close that gate and it to furtherance of a restriction for access to Cruiser Park, that would be a very difficult thing to accomplish. Granted, we do have two multiple access points, but I just wanted to bring that up to the group. You know, that gate's open. So closing it for beach access would cause another kind of whack-a-mole effect on the business side of it. And I just want to make it clear that when we bring forward items, specifically items like opening bathrooms under any of these phases, that's done so with the commitment from staff that's already explored and looked into the ability to do that function. We wouldn't suggest opening bathrooms under any phase if we couldn't do it safely, especially during a pandemic. So feel comfortable that what we've presented has been looked at from a lot of different staff with input from all our different departments that are involved in running in the logistics of running that property. It's a lot of hands that are involved in multiple.
We lost you.
Outside of the,
You're back again.
but I just wanted to clarify a couple of those points there, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, oh, sorry, Commissioner Hardy, you have one more? And let's try to wrap it up if we can. Your mute is on. Your mute's on, Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah, just one quick question. What the fixtures on the sinks in the bathroom, how do they operate?
If they're not push button, I want to say they're push button. Some used to be the traditional knob, but part of our mitigation as we look at opening up is just like the showers, push button. We want to try to minimize surface contact.
So if there are any knobs or anything like that, we would change those to touchless faucets.
Yes, that's part of what we're trying to you know, look at, not just at the beach bathrooms, but you know, around the parks and stuff to try to mitigate, like I said, any potential contamination.
Right. Okay. Same for toilets and flushing.
I want to say I don't want to say they're all push button now, but we can definitely, if that's a desire for the the policy board to have that as part of a plan, we can definitely make those structural changes to those facilities. A lot of them are push button because remember, when the beach was redeveloped, there were a lot of water saving measures put in place. So there's a lot of energy saving components already there.
Sure.
So a lot of the stuff is kind of like, you know, that push button and it kind of expires before your hands are completely clean of soap.
If we do that, people should be able to go in and out of that bathroom without touching anything except a paper towel. That includes, by the way, to get in and out of a stall and to lock the stall behind them. I don't know how we're going to do that, but they should be able to do it with their foot or something. Just FYI, saying we're going to, and also, I get that the beach has been open. The gate has been open for the past 2 days, but it's not that hard to close the gate. It's been closed for the previous 30. And so, I again, if I had my druthers, it wouldn't be open right now. It wouldn't have been opened on Monday. But look, I'm on the other side of what appears to be a 4-1, so I won't go further into that. But I just, I really hope that this works out well. I really hope it does, because if it does not, and we have no idea the probability of it not working out, the consequences will be a lot worse than the benefits people will get from being able to go to the beach. So, hey.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell. Your mute's on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate listening to this very robust conversation. I think it's perfectly natural and normal for any one of us to have reservations and apprehensions about reopening the beach. This is a completely uncharted territory, and it's unfortunate, though, that we don't have the ability to predict an exact date and say, look, the coast is clear on such and such a day. And the harsh reality of it is we have to do the best we can with the data that's available to us, the science that's available to us, the statistics that are being given to us, and we have to make the best possible decision to move forward with our society. And I think that no matter what decision we make here, we all pray that it's the right decision, and that the degree of this disease, this health epidemic, or pandemic, I should say, is over as quickly as possible. But I don't know that, just keeping everything status quo and locked up right now, given what's been going on around the country. I mean, I've heard Georgia's reopened itself, and I'm not hearing of any issues there. And I agree that everybody is unique and everybody's different, but we just have to rely on the best science and data available. And I'd like to believe that those folks that are providing that science and those folks that are providing recommendations at the county level, at the state level, are doing it with our best interests in mind. And I believe that they're doing just that. They're doing the very best they can to make the very best decision they can for all parties concerned. So again, I thank everybody for their contribution to this conversation today.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have one more? Or did you forget to take it down?
Just quickly, if there is going to be a motion to move to phase 1 for the beach opening, I hope it includes an ability to have somebody make a decision on the consequences of people not practicing personal responsibility.
Thank you.
I cannot vote for opening if we don't address the ability to close it.
If people aren't behaving themselves.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, I
Thank
agree.
you.
I tend to agree with you too, Commissioner Robinson. I feel very strongly that, the county commission did an amazing job. I watched their deliberations for hours, and I think Mayor Kerner's awesome. All the commissioners are wonderful, very thoughtful, and I really appreciate that. We have pretty much been taking a stance from the beginning that, that we're following what the state sends down and also what the county is doing. I received numerous calls from mayors all in Palm Beach County saying, we need to be together on this, because what you don't do, then they'll run here, and what you don't do, they'll run there. And they're very concerned about that. And it seems that, from my reaching out within the community, that everyone seems to be cautiously optimistic of this first step, should the county approve it. And I agree with the vice mayor in reference to following their lead in this. As for personal responsibility, with Commissioner Robinson said, nobody's a bigger germaphobe than me, and this has created, chaos in my household because I clean and wash everything down, and I look at the essential businesses and go in there and see, as mentioned, some without masks, some without this, some without that. I don't open a door without a glove on, a paper towel, a tissue, or whatever. My groceries come, I wipe them all down, front and back, left and right. The bags sit outside for 3 days or 4 days. And so before I reuse them for the garbage cans, and I'm constantly doing this. I feel like I feel like an old washwoman, cleaning everything, constantly all the time, and wiping every surface down nonstop, no matter where I go. So I understand that, but the same reason my building just opened up in my private business, and and I still go in there, open everything with, again, a glove, a mask on. I go into my building with the mask on, with a glove on, until I'm in a controlled environment where it's just me. People, we're going to probably be in this for a while. We're not just talking about through a beach reopening or a phase 1 reopening. We're going to have to take personal responsibility for a while. And this is going to be, things may get open, but, this is maybe a way of life for us for a while. And this is something that we have to, as Americans and as Lake Worthians, sit down and say we may have to be extra cautious for a while. Going into a Walmart, or going into a supermarket, or going into whatever, or going into a bathroom in a supermarket or a Walmart. Taking all these precautions that we're talking about taking, we're probably going to have double, triple the amount of staff more attentive to these than in some of these essential businesses that are running here, not to name anything in particular, but I'm ready. We've got a motion on the floor in a second, and that's not to approve the reopening plan. Motion made by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Commissioner Robinson. So we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Hey,
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Okay, let's take a quick recess for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back with the second item. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yes?
We're not necessarily done with that item because we haven't approved it.
Oh, okay. We got, thank you. Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to approve it with the following amendments.
Hold on okay, hold on. Who had their hand up first there? Because you spoke out of turn
I did.
without raising your hand. Hold on.
I
Sylvina, you made the comment out loud, but Sylvina has the hands. Let me just confirm it. Okay, it was you. Thank you. Just because someone speaks out doesn't mean they have the floor.
Sure. Yep. So I make the motion with the following amendments. The first would be that in any phase, until we're totally reopened, we would have equal numbers of spots open for resident decals and for non-resident decals. Okay, so that the total number of cars from folks outside the community are not exceeding the number of cars from folks within the community. That would be my first amendment. And my second amendment would be that we limit it, as Captain Bayer was discussing, to active use only. So that, you're not going out there with a beach towel and lying on the, doing, just hanging around, having a cookout, that you're moving, you're running, you're exercising, etc., which would again discourage people from coming from outside of our community to this community to visit the beach.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to have a second. Yeah, you were up first. Are you seconding the motion? Vice Mayor Pro Tem? Your volume is off.
No, ma'am, I'm not seconding the motion. I have my hand up first, and I don't totally agree with that motion, so no.
Okay, do I have a second then on that? Commissioner Robinson?
well, I again am asking for any motion to move to phase 1, that it includes addressing the ability to close it in the event that it's necessary.
And
health-wise.
that's not the current motion. So do I have a second for the motion made by Commissioner Hardy?
I'll amend the motion to include
Oh, come on.
Herman's request to give the city manager the ability to shut it down if things get out of control.
Without
se-
swimming,
I'll second.
swimming or without, is yours, Commissioner Hardy, without swimming?
No, it doesn't address swimming at all. The now three amendments are at each phase, no more cars outside of the resident only area
Got that,
than are inside of the resident only area.
got that.
Active use only, no sitting around, and giving the city manager per Herman's request. I'll add that to the motion, giving the city manager the ability to shut it down completely if things get out of control in his judgment or in the judgment of Captain Bear or the lifeguards.
And you seconded that, Commissioner Robinson?
Yes,
Okay, I have a concern that if that does not mirror what the county is saying, that we're talking about mirroring what the county said, but. All right, we've got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 Nay,
All those opposed,
Nay.
nay.
motion fails 3-2. I'll entertain another motion. Vice Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we approve the phased-in approach that the city manager has outlined here this evening. And I also want to remind everybody about, again, as Commissioner Robin has said so eloquently, about the personal responsibility. It is absolutely positively incumbent upon each of us to do our part. As I've seen it so eloquently stated in a billboard somewhere, do your part, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands and wear your mask. Okay, very, very important. And also as part of that motion, I would like to make sure that it's clear that we are giving the city manager complete authority to take whatever action is necessary to mirror the county. And if he decides he wants to shut down the beach or whatever, but this issue from going forward is solely in the lap of the city manager at his discretion.
do I have a second?
Second,
Second, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed,
Nay.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes,
You're
I'm with the motion.
with the motion. Okay, so motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much. And now we'll take that recess for a bathroom break. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we're live again.
Okay, great. Let's resume this Tuesday, May 12th, special city commission meeting with the item on the agenda, new business, item B, consideration of issues and request for official action regarding the governor's executive order for phase 1 reopening of Florida. I'll entertain a motion. Vice Mayor Pro Tem, I saw your lips.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Amoroso made the second. Okay. You have a presentation?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, just as I opened with the previous item, we're responding to some of the actions taken by the governor's state of Florida. And this particular action was moving Palm Beach County to phase 1 in a declaration he made as an executive order of 112. And specifically, this executive order provides for some changes in how businesses operate, and most specifically restaurants. And the restaurants in the city are, under this executive order, are allowed to go to 25% of their indoor seating capacity, with some other restrictions against seating at the bar and other activities. In conversations with the business community, especially downtown, there was an appreciation and a request made by several of the business owners over the last several weeks that if and when the governor went to this phase of reopening the state, that the 25% interior space for a lot of these restaurants in these historic structures creates an issue with the ability to serve enough clientele to make the numbers work so that they could employ their staffs and have enough turns on meals through their restaurant. And in the order, it doesn't regulate outside cafe types of dining al fresco where they're properly spaced and put into a configuration where they meet the social distancing guidelines. So a lot of the cities around us, including what we've been in conversations with our restaurant owners, is the ability to allow them to expand their outdoor seating area, not just on areas that are available, maybe on the cafe areas of the sidewalk beyond their normal permits, but also the one area that exists in some cases along the lettered streets or alphabet streets in the downtown, which are under city's ownership. You own them, they're not under the state control, and you have a lot more leeway to provide potentially some relief and extra area for these restaurants to position strategically patrons. And that would be in the parking areas along the alphabet streets that adjoin some of these restaurants. What I wanted to do tonight was to run through a very quick presentation that talks about 3 different options and gives you some ideas based on some of the conversations we've been having with the business community. And I'm not sure who's controlling the PowerPoint, but it's not me. So if we go to our next slide, maybe it is me.
Hold on, Mike.
Huh?
I'm having some technical difficulties. It's my presentation. I'm controlling it. I just need to verify whether you can see me or not. What is everyone looking at on the screen currently? It should be a picture of downtown.
Yeah, it's the downtown. So if you'll go to the first slide one, there you go. Thank you. You did a great job there. You have the rest of the day off. With any kind of a program where you're allowing private sector to, even under these extraordinary circumstances, use public areas, there needs to be some consideration of regulating these activities. And so staff worked on this both in the Public Services Department, which controls the public rights-of-way areas and keeps them under their jurisdiction, as well as community sustainability in William Waters' department on dealing with the cafe licensing in the process. So we've come up with some stipulations that if a business is to take advantage of this outdoor seating expansion plan, that first and foremost, they would need to have an active, up-to-date business license with the city, that they're a legitimate restaurant in the city. Secondly, we would give them a minimum of 500 square feet of right-of-way which is estimated that that would fit about 10 4-seat tables and allow for physical distancing as spelled out in the governor's executive order. We would work with the businesses and we would install the FDOT approved water barricades that we have, and Public Services is ready to install if y'all agree with this. And they would coordinate on the layout with the businesses. This would just be, just to clarify again, only on the lettered streets in the downtown, not on the Lake and Lucerne. We are having conversations with FDOT about the possibilities of what we can do in the Lake and Lucerne rights of ways. But right now, this is just in this option 1, J Street through L Street in the downtown, where businesses adjoin public parking. Those spaces could be blocked off and used for additional alfresco outside dining, and positioned in such a way that it promotes social distancing, but just more area while complying with the 25% limitation that's inside the restaurant per the governor's executive order. So that would be the very minimum request or option that we're presenting to you. And if you go to the next slide, you can see in more detail, hopefully, the areas in green where those parking spots are on J, K, and L streets. Now, we went a little further and actually have asked FDOT, based on our ability to ask for street closures. And we based these next 2 options on a Friday through Sunday scenario. The first one would be to ask the state if on a weekend we could close down the entirety of Lake Avenue and make it more accessible for the restaurants, especially the businesses that don't front or have frontage on a side alphabet street, to allow them to go out and do a cafe kind of environment out into the street, and give them that opportunity on a long weekend, how to expand their tabletops and to work with them on that. There is some additional costs for that, because we have to deal with additional barricades to close off the street, which is different than just closing off the parking lots. And you'll remember when we did the street painting festival or parade, it's a little more involved because we have to place signage across on Lake Avenue as you're coming east, and we have to put signage down at Federal, and there's a lot more activity that needs to be involved to provide an MOT that meets the state standards, because it is their right of way. And you can see on this scenario here of closing Lake down on a weekend, what it would cost both by the day and for a weekend cost with PBSO barricades. It's about $11,000, $11,500 for a weekend just to close Lake. Now, it's a second option if you're interested in doing that kind of activity. You can get a little more intensive, and there's some cities that are also doing this, and I didn't mention that, but West Palm, for example, is closing down Clematis Street and allowing this kind of cafe activity to occur. So not only Lake, but you also have the option of closing down the entire Lake and Lucerne area on the next slide. And that would be for the same period of time. Now, there's more barricades and more policing required. And that would end up costing you close to $22,000 to effect a shutdown of downtown to allow for this cafe environment to exist within the street right away and make it a walking, sort of open Lincoln Road kind of an affair. Again, all with social distancing and requirements. We enumerated the outdoor seating expansion restrictions. And what we would really like to do is to get official direction from the commission on how you want to proceed with this, and give us the go-ahead so that tomorrow morning we could go ahead and install the barricades or not. Your other option, obviously, is to say no to this concept. And it was generated, as I said, in conversations that was had with the business community. And I know that there had been some conversations even with some of the business owners and the elected officials. So with that, Mayor, That's our request, is for direction on what you want to do as in regards to phase one regarding these specific activities in the downtown area. And with that, I'll turn it back over.
I spoke with, can you hear me? Okay. Now I can't hear you, City Manager. Who keeps flipping these things on and off? Okay. I spoke with several of the business owners downtown, and while there seemed to be consensus on the side streets, there wasn't consensus on shutting the whole street down. But yet some of the restaurants that are in the middle that don't back up to, a lettered street, we're wondering what if FDOT would allow for them to take over the few spots in front of some of their smaller or larger restaurants that were on that, rather than shut down all of Lake or Lucerne, if they could expand into that area. Has that conversation happened yet?
Madam Mayor, that was a conversation that's occurring simultaneously with FDOT. I don't have an answer for you specifically on whether or not we can do that just yet.
Okay.
But it was something, again, that requires FDOT's approval.
I just didn't know, when you said Lauren was looking into it, I wondered if that was something that she was thinking of when you were creating the plan or not.
At this point, staff has only been able to give me what you see before you in conversations with FDOT and the cost associated with that.
Okay.
We haven't gotten the information on the specifics of just doing the parking spaces that are in front of the businesses who are sort of landlocked.
Right.
They're not at an
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, some of those people mentioned to me as well. Okay. Commissioner Hardy? You're muted.
Thank you. Look, I am dead set against this. I'm probably on the other side of a 4-1, if I'm lucky, a 3-2. But I am dead set against this. This is, going out to eat, going out to a restaurant is not necessary in a pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic. And as Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell stated, we are in uncharted territories. What that means is that we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We're not even close to knowing what the outcome is going to be. We can't articulate the odds of the outcome not being terrible, but we are going to allow people to do the kinds of things that increase the risk of folks transmitting and contracting this virus, even if they're sitting outside. Again, it's a greater risk than folks being at home where they should be. And this whole phase one thing, it coming from the county, it coming from the governor, look, in South Florida, this is ill-advised in my view. You can go on the state's website right now and look at positive cases recently. They have been increasing, not decreasing. One of the criteria for entering phase one is a 14-day downward trajectory in either documented cases or test positivity rate. Neither of those criteria are met. Test positivity rate is not decreasing, it's flat. It's been flat for 2 weeks. Positive cases are increasing. We've had two of the three highest days have been in the last 10 days. When I say that is 2 of the last 10 days have had very, very high documented numbers of cases. So we're moving to phase one, even though we haven't met the White House's criteria for phase one on one of the three-legged stools, which is documented cases and test positivity rates. And we have no idea what's going on at hospitals and hospital capacity and testing of hospital staff. We're not in a position to verify that ourselves, yet we're moving toward phase one. This is not necessary. This is not necessary. And if the idea is that folks need to get back to work, I, first of all, empathize with folks who are not as lucky as some of us here. On the other hand, you know, we've been through recessions before, and over long periods of time, people claw their way out of these things. Over long periods of time, people are able to dig themselves out of the financial holes that they get into during recessions. You can't dig your way out of the grave. And if we're wrong about this reopening being safe, the consequences will be that people get sick and die who didn't need to get sick and who didn't need to die. And for what? So that we can sit outside at a restaurant and have a bite to eat? What is that worth relative to someone's health? And even folks who don't pass away, they're still getting sick. They're still having to go to a doctor or potentially to go to the hospital or to quarantine themselves from their own families. This is not necessary. This is not necessary. It is risk without reward, and I cannot support this. That says if it goes through, you should obviously, in my opinion, go for option 3, because it's the option that gives folks the greatest ability to space themselves. But we shouldn't be considering any of these options right now because we haven't met the White House's own criteria for entering phase 1, because our test positivity rate is flat in Palm Beach County and cases are increasing. I don't even know why we're considering this.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My motion would be for option 1. I too have talked to the merchants downtown, and one of the biggest concerns is the storefronts, like you had mentioned, the restaurants that are on lake. And I think we
Froze up.
We froze up. Hold on a second, Vice Mayor. See if it passes.
we can have in those restaurants at night, so we can help those merchants, those restaurants on lake.
Could you repeat? I'm sorry, you froze up for a long period of time and we didn't hear any of your comments.
Okay, I'll start over.
Thank
So option 1, I support. And again, like you had said, Madam Mayor, I've talked to quite a few merchants downtown, and the restaurants on lake are concerned. I think we need to move forward as soon as possible with the conversation with DOT to allow those restaurants to extend in front of some of those merchants that are not open. So I support the option 1 with DOT's approval for the restaurants on the lake.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Again, I'm going to mention personal responsibility and fairness in terms of dealing with all the businesses. You know, I'm not in. I don't like looking at $22,000 a weekend expense, and I'm not sure that that's fair to everybody. Fairness, you know, is important, and it's difficult when there's some people have an advantage and others don't, and it's way too easy to say, okay, just do it this way because it's easier. Fairness is difficult, and I'm concerned about that. I really don't like what's been going on in terms of personal responsibility on the street so far. And I don't want to lose any business downtown, whether it's a restaurant or you know, an ice cream store or whatever. There are other businesses other than restaurants that need to stay open. I still think that all those businesses in the city need help. I don't want to increase the expenses for the few restaurants that are going to benefit the most. I'm sorry, but The order was to allow them to be open 25%. And it'll soon probably change. And I'm good with leaving it at that.
Thank
Thanks.
you. City manager, maybe you can clarify for me. Meant to mention it on the last item, but it applies to this one as well. The county commission, didn't they vote unanimously to move to phase? Didn't they send a letter to the governor to ask them to move us to phase one? But was it unanimous is the question I had.
I believe, Madam Mayor, the vote was a 6-0 to send the letter
Okay.
To the governor, and then kind of to our surprise on Friday, the governor moved to phase one. So,
Okay.
but the county commission did ask that on behalf of the county.
Yeah, I mean, as a small business owner and knowing a lot of restaurants and working with a lot of restaurants over the course of many years, I know how they're struggling. But the retail stores, you know, let's also talk about the retail stores as well. They're open as well in this phase one with their social distancing procedures and as well. You know, there's so much to be. I will tell you, and I mentioned before, and I don't want to just go off on something, but I mentioned before about everyone taking personal responsibility for their actions. But I will tell you, and I also mentioned before, that it's going to be a while that we're going through this, and we're going to have to get used to a new normal, you know, and it's going to be mask wearing and glove wearing and cleaning things off and doing things. But I think that probably initially the trend will be towards dining more outside if those options are available as people get used to the idea. So I'm definitely for expanding into these areas to allow them to social distance the tables. And because I think more people will probably want to still be outside, feeling hesitant about going back, but wanting to go back. So I would say that I did notice, I think Boynton Beach or Lantana or some of the other communities, they also allowed for tents, I guess, for anyone going out onto the sidewalks or to the streets, for the allowance of tents in case the inclement weather and the sun, so that more people could sit outside, you know, depending on whether there was rain or not. I don't know if we have something in place for that. I know some other cities have scrambled to make that happen just so that more people could be outside. And what about the establishments that have existing parking lots? Could they then turn their parking lot into an outdoor area and allow for street parking, you know, and at the restaurants as well? Just a few ideas that I was thinking of. City manager, has any of those items come up in your conversations with staff?
Madam Mayor, we had conversations in restaurants with parking areas and the ability for them to go outside on their own property is something that's obviously is something we can definitely allow, especially given the fact that they can only use 25%. We focused on the downtown because they were the most restricted due to the historic nature of the building and the fact that a lot of these buildings don't have their own parking or cafe areas. But those are all good points to include in the conversation.
Well, we're heading into the summer months here too, so whether it's rain or whether it's sun,
Yes, ma'am.
extreme heat, that might be something to think about. Vice Mayor? Sorry.
Yeah, and I just wanted to piggyback on what you had said, Madam Mayor. As a small business owner, we have the ability to police our shops, and we do. You know, we have the ability to not let more than a certain amount of people in, make sure that they're wearing masks, and we are. Paul's on the Avenue is doing a great job. That somebody has a mask on, they're taking things to the curb. Also, the barbershop downtown is seeing people. You wash your hands when you get there. You have to wear a mask. They have 4 chairs. They're all distanced from each other. They have a seating outside in the back of the building that has distancing. So if you're waiting, you're not sitting next to somebody. So as a small business owner, small businesses, I think are doing it right. And again, I agree with Commissioner Robinson that, you know, everybody needs to take personal distancing and, you know, do it. And I think the small businesses are showing that. So, you know, phase one, I think with the small businesses, and also as the restaurants open, the restaurants are the ones that serve liquor that can do more advertising. And when they advertise, they help the smaller businesses in the downtown. So it's a trickle down and a whole package. So by allowing the restaurants to do what they need with outside seating and distancing, you're actually helping all the other small businesses in the downtown corridor. and all over the city. We have to remember that we don't have just downtown. We have small businesses all over the city that are starting to open again, and they're doing it right.
Right. Commissioner Hardy? You're muted.
Thank you. Look, first thing I'll say is we need to listen to the epidemiologists. We need to listen to the doctors with respect to all 6 county commissioners. All 6 of them are not listening to the doctors, and they're not listening to the experts. The experts that promulgated the criteria for going to phase 1 told us where we need to be in terms that are not ambiguous, especially as regards documented cases. We are not there. As a matter of fact, we're the exact opposite of there. The experts, the people who do this for a living, the doctors who know what they're talking about, the epidemiologists who study this, they say that we need 14-day downward trajectories in positive cases or test positivity rate. Now, I've already said that our positive cases are increasing, not decreasing. I misspoke when I said that the test positivity rate, which is the percentage of positive cases out of all of the testing that's occurred over a period of time, I misspoke when I said that the test positivity rate is flat. It's actually not. It was flat the last time I looked at it. It's increasing. Okay, between 5.2 and 5.9, it increased, and we are on a trajectory to leave the target zone for test positivity rate, which is where we are right now. The target zone is below 10. We went from 6.5 to almost 9%, and with things opening up, it's not unreasonable to say that we may be leaving the target zone of below 10% for the test positivity rate. But so if you don't want to listen to the doctors, which have put forth very clear criteria that we haven't met in Palm Beach, no matter what the Board of County Commissioners votes, you can't politic a virus. It's going to do what it wants to do. And we're not following the criteria that's been promulgated by the CDC and the White House to enter phase 1. And the idea that we can do that without paying for it in terms of sickness and in potentially lives lost is foolish. We're going to pay for this.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, folks are really desperate right now. Business owners are desperate right now. Workers who have not been able to access the unemployment benefits that they are due because our unemployment system was purposely sabotaged by the last governor. They are desperate right now. And we may be tempted to respond to their desperation as far as their financial situation by doing something that makes people physically unsafe and potentially unhealthy by going into this reopening. But here's where I know school is still closed. So when we reopen phase 1 and these workers, these single moms, where are they going to send their kids? School's closed, summer camp's closed, daycare's closed. You obviously don't want kids congregating together. Where are they going to send their kids when they are having to report back to work? That's number one. Who among you can answer that question? And I want to hear the answer. Where is the single mom going to take her child or children when she has to report back to work? That's number one. Number two, these folks are safe at home where they are. The mom, the dad is safe at home. The children are safe at home and not at school. And by entering phase 1 right now, despite not meeting the criteria, what we are requiring people to do is to leave home and go to work and risk interacting with the public and basically assume greater risk of contracting or transmitting the virus. And we're doing that for I don't know what reason to fit in with the decisions that other politicians have made. I find that very interesting from someone who sits on the board of directors of the League of Cities, which sort of makes a sport out of jousting with the county and the state. You know, we tend to take pride in our ability to do what we want to do here at the local level. Now, all of a sudden, we have to do the same thing that the county or the state is doing, even though the evidence says we shouldn't. But tell me what you're going to do for the workers who have their children at home and who have to report to work. And tell me what you're going to do for the person who is right now getting unemployment. One of the few, less than half of the claims have been paid. Let's say you're one of those folks who are getting unemployment. You're being paid to sit at home. You're being paid to be safe. You now have to choose between keeping your stream of income by going to work, or losing the unemployment in order to remain safe because if your employer calls you back to work after being furloughed, you no longer qualify, and you have to certify every week that you qualify for unemployment. That's number one. The other thing is, how can we possibly consider opening retail in this city? What safe way is there to shop for clothes? Everyone does the same thing when they go shopping for clothes. You go, you look at the stuff, you move the stuff on the hanger, you touch it, you feel it, you potentially put it on. Is there a safe way to ever do that when we're in the midst of a pandemic? I don't know that there is. And the other thing is, Madam Mayor, you are very right. We absolutely need to get used to a new normal. But the new normal we need to get used to is not taking these risks that treat vulnerable populations as if they're expendable. And I'm not saying that folks on this dais are actively internalizing the idea that folks are expendable. What I'm saying is we're making decisions that have implications for people who are vulnerable, people of color, elderly, folks without insurance, people who are poor, people with pre-existing medical conditions. We're moving towards a reopening in the face of evidence that says we should not be doing that. And we are putting at risk folks who are vulnerable. We are telling workers with single kids, leave your kids at home, go to work, okay? And for what? For what?
Did you ask the county commission that when you went there?
Yeah, so you know, first of all, I have to say, I very much appreciated the exchange between Commissioner McKinley and I, because we both represent similar populations. She represents folks out in the Glades, very high poverty rate. I represent, you know, one of the poorest, I think it's the poorest census tract in the city, Census Tract 4402, 48% poverty rate. For the children, it's over 70%. And we both took different approaches to this. Her approach was that folks need to go back to work because they're in a desperate financial situation. My approach was you can recover from financial setbacks. Look, the Great Recession hit my family very hard, and we're still recovering financially from that. But you can recover. You can dig your way out of that financial hole. You can't dig your way out of the grave. And if you are fortunate enough to survive the virus, if you get it, and you're uninsured, which many folks at Lake Worth are, you end up with what kind of hospital bill, Madam Mayor? Right? And so, you know, this is really, all of us are being put in a bad situation because Congress and the president have not done what they needed to do to put money in the pockets of people who need it. We spent $2.5 trillion. There are 258 adult Americans in this country. You could have put, for $2.5 trillion, you could have put $3,250 in the pocket of every adult American every month for 3 months. Instead, we got bailouts for Ruth Chris, the Lakers, and, you know, a single $1,200 check. That's not good enough, and that's why people and business owners are desperate. But it's foolhardy to say that this is going to go forward and that there's no risk, or that, you know, it's unlikely that, you know, the risks, you know, will materialize. This will be my last comment on this. In early 1700s, I think it's 1720, was one of the last outbreaks of the bubonic plague in the world, and it was in Marseille. It's the plague of Marseille, and Marseille had doctors and a whole public sanitation board that created criteria that you had to meet in order to enter the city of Marseille. And the merchants in the city were getting tired of that. They had this sanitation board for almost 200 years. They got tired of it. They wanted to make some money. There was a festival. There was a shipment coming in of goods they wanted to sell. They pressured the politicians to get rid of the criteria. And what happened? You had over half of their city die in a 2-year period, and 50,000 more people outside of Marseille. Now, obviously, this is not as dire a situation because the mortality rate with this disease is not the same as obviously the bubonic plague, but we're facing a similar pressure. We're being asked to do what the doctors are saying we shouldn't do because people are economically and financially desperate. And the consequences are deadly and irrevocable. And we really need to pump the brakes on this. I'm going to lose this vote, but we need to pump the brakes on this.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me? Okay. A couple of things I wanted to bring up with regard to this potential phasing in here. Number one, I would suggest that the city do everything within its power to continue to push out any possible means of communication to remind folks of their personal responsibility. Okay, that would include something as significant as the marquee in front of City Hall, perhaps in 3 languages, reminding folks to keep their distance and to wear their mask and to wash their hands. I would also recommend that the city produce a standard, producing a standard piece of signage that each business can put in their window that says the same thing. So everybody's going to get the same message. It's going to be formatted the same. So no matter who you are, no matter where you walk in our city, you're going to see the same message, and that message be reinforced. And the other issue that I wanted to bring up too was, no matter what phase or what option we choose here, I think it's really, really important that we establish on day one an exact floor plan for all of our restaurants. They're going to have outside seating and inside seating, and that floor plan needs to be documented and signed off on, approved by the city and by the restaurant owner, lest there be no misunderstanding that if somebody comes by, and I don't know, how we would necessarily enforce this. I guess it is enforceable if you violate the executive order, but lest there be no misunderstanding as to where your seats are supposed to be and how many you're supposed to have at any given time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Robinson?
Again, we're giving people the opportunity to endanger themselves. Commissioner Hardy is absolutely right that, this is a dangerous time, and we're reacting to the other side of human desires. This is stressful times for everybody, the business owners, the people that have stayed indoors. Again, I'm going to ask about being able to stop the opening, the expansion of allowing people to not practice personal responsibility. Do I understand that phase 1 or option 1 doesn't cost the city any money at all? Is City Manager, is that?
City Manager?
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
Commissioner Robinson, yes, that's devices and things that we have in stock, and we're using our own staff to put those in place, and basically just allowing them to use that specific area. So we're not paying any fees or charges.
Yeah, and that's good, but again, it goes to fairness again, which is difficult and something that we probably aren't going to be able to solve. So I will be in favor of option 1, with the understanding somehow of being able to not close it down, but minimize the openness. I don't know how to say it, but we need to respond to really what we're opening up ourselves to probably a bad outcome.
Assistant City Manager? You're on mute.
My cursor, sorry, there was trying to chase my cursor there. I just wanted to, Madam Mayor, thank you. Answer your specific question that you asked earlier of the city manager regarding the ability to utilize the parking spaces at Front Lake and Lucerne for restaurants that may want to participate in an outdoor cafe environment.
Mhm.
And there is a process that we can pursue. And what it would require is our staff to ask the question to those businesses, we'll say the restaurants. And if they have any interest, then it would require them to complete a sidewalk permit that we already have in place and a certificate of insurance naming not only the city, but FDOT as additionally insured. And from that point, FDOT really only concern is to pay them the $2 per square foot that would be activated by utilizing those parking spaces. And, the city could consider as an economic, help to cover the $2 per square space for those restaurants that wanted to participate. So to answer your question, there is a process we can follow, and we can definitely direct staff to ask those restaurants and canvass those restaurants to use that modified version that beyond, shutting down Lake and Lucerne, which, as you've seen, has a very costly impact.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just need some clarity that I was the second on the motion. I was making the motion or thought the motion was for one. I just need clarity that we are on one for the motion.
Maker of the motion was Commissioner Maxwell?
Commissioner Maxwell.
That's correct.
For item number one.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Also, we have I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I'm still okay with the second on the motion, and I agree with you, Madam Mayor, that we should city manager to move forward with DOT to check and see exactly what that looks like
More
for the
distance,
tables in front of businesses,
more distance, the better, yeah.
the ones on Lake.
Robinson?
Well, again, I'm going to ask for the ability to rectify this decision. And I certainly don't want to ask any of the restaurants on Lake and Lucerne to pay when other restaurants don't have to pay. So it goes to fairness again, and I think that's not a fair situation. But I am concerned about the consequences of our decision tonight, and with an ability to try to rectify it. And I'm going to vote, again, the importance of the consequences are going to affect my vote to move it forward if we don't have the ability to recognize the consequences.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy?
Just a quick question to Mike. It's been said before, when I proposed, for example, that we require businesses to admit only folks who wear masks, that was rejected because, according to the three who rejected it, that it was impossible to enforce. How could we enforce a requirement on businesses like that? And so I will ask the question now. If restaurants are moving to 25% capacity, how can we enforce that? And how are we more capable of enforcing that than we are of a simple requirement to wear masks?
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
as part of the process to move towards their ability to use these outside areas in this option one, the restaurants that I've talked to have a physical set of activities they're doing within the restaurant by the way they have their tables and their seating. So it's fairly easy to see the plan that they would lay out for us in how they position the tables and the chairs and the seating arrangements. I know that some of them have taken tables and booths out or physically blocked them off. So that would be the first way that I think that would be the easiest way for us to understand if they're complying with the 25%. Commissioner Hardy.
Yeah, and to follow up, Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes, thank you.
So, what you're saying is that they would submit a plan telling us what they would do, but that's not, that doesn't speak to our ability to enforce their compliance with the plan. Basically, what you're saying is someone would tell us, hey, I promise to arrange my restaurant this way, and I promise not to let in more people than X number of folks. And we're going to take their plan and take their word for it. I want to know how we are going to ensure that they do what they say they are going to do. And in addition to that, the second question is, how are we more able to ensure their compliance with the plans that they present to us than we were able or are able today to ensure that they comply with, for example, a requirement to admit only those patrons wearing masks? So how do we enforce this? And how are we more able to enforce this than we are to enforce a requirement to wear masks?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
the mask issue, and I don't know if the PBSO wants to step in on this, but under the orders that people should wear a mask and the city's ability to enforce that and take action is a different set of things, because that's a person on their personal, being donning a face mask and having some ability to provide some corrective measure or a notice to appear or even an arrest is different than the physical nature of a restaurant facilitating the 25% seating arrangement within their restaurant facility. That's fairly easy to verify. And then if people are violating those things, unlike submitting a notice to appear for not wearing a mask, we can revoke their ability to use the public spaces and add to their 25% restrictions inside, to express the seriousness of this. If you have a restaurant that doesn't facilitate that seating arrangement, which is physical, we have a different ability to revoke this license, or it's not a license, it's a permit to use the public areas. And that's a pretty severe, in some of these cases, I would imagine, threat for them to maintain and operate as responsible business owners in accordance with these rules of the 25%. That's kind of how we're seeing this. It's not the same in our minds as the mask issue.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I just wanted to, kind of reiterate, I think what the city manager was trying to say, and that is, if I'm a restaurant operator or a retail operator, yes, I want to have business. I want to see that cash register ring. On the other side of the coin, I don't want my employees to become sick, nor do I personally want to become sick. So I can tell you that I would personally not allow somebody to enter my business if they weren't complying with that strong encouragement. Additionally, Madam Mayor, you've said it a couple of times this evening about the new normal, and you're absolutely right. I keep a couple of face masks in each of my vehicles, and there's been a number of times where I've gone into an establishment and gotten out of the vehicle out of habit, not being used to wearing a mask, walking up to the door and seeing the sign that says no mask, no service, and I turn right back around. I go back to my vehicle, I get my mask, and I get the service that I set out to get. So is it a perfect system? Is it, does it satisfy Commissioner Hardy's concerns? 100% no. But I think at the end of the day, I think we have to believe there are enough responsible operators out there that don't want to jeopardize their business or the health of their employees or their customers by not taking this very serious.
Thank you. I just want to mention one thing too, just as a correction. Commissioner Hardy, you said that I said that it can't be enforced. That wasn't my argument in regards to the face mask. My argument was the fact that not everybody was able to find, obtain, buy, or get, including myself, other than one portable face mask at the time that we were discussing that. I have since been able to. It's only been a month in a week, but I actually got a box of portable face masks. Yay. It's only been a month and a week, but that was my argument for that. That was number one. The other thing is, in acting lockstep, with the county and the county's unanimous decision to open up to phase one, is that, okay, so say someone in our community says, all right, well, they're going to shut it down and we'll be an island and everything will be shut down. And guess where they're going to go? They're going to go to Lantana, or they're going to go to Boynton Beach, or they're going to go to Boca Raton, or they're going to go somewhere else, should they choose to go. And then they're going to come back to Lake Worth Beach. So the same argument could be had again, in that, you know, we're trying to do this together in a partnership and a team, and that will not stop people, just as you mentioned earlier about going to the different beaches. It will not stop people from going to open restaurants, etc. So it's the same argument that could be had. But City Clerk, do you have any public comment cards? Because we're going long here and we haven't even heard from the public.
Madam Mayor, I do. I have 4. The first one's kind of long, but bear with me.
Okay.
It's from Joseph Lipovich at 701 Lake Avenue. He writes, "The right to choose. Where would we be today without choice? In every community, culture, and ethnic group, there are examples of great people whose personal choice changed the world for good. Would these people ever give up their right to choose under any circumstances? No way. The current situation with COVID-19 is delicate, and it is understandable that some are afraid. I would like to remind the commissioners why the shutdown action was taken. The goal was to slow the spread, flatten the curve, and not to overwhelm the healthcare system. It's not a strategy to eradicate the virus. Only a vaccine can accomplish that. The statistics are horrible and unacceptable, but the shutdown did the intended job. It's time to move forward. The virus, whether we like it or not, will take its course, and the people will have to make a choice on how they want to deal with the risk, no differently than we decide every day to the risk driving on Interstate 95 versus taking Dixie Highway. Specific to restaurants reopening, it is ill-advised to think some workers could be made to feel forced to return to work, as if they are surviving on unemployment. The reality is most are not receiving benefits. Many did not receive the stimulus money, and the majority are in no way fearful of working. They understand the risks and still want to work. They are aware of things things can get much worse for them the longer they're out of work. Those in the restaurant business understand that there are some workers that do not have a phone and are difficult to reach. They are loyal and dedicated to their family. They are most vulnerable that some speak about, yet despite any benefits they could receive. They are the first to come back to work. They have no idea we need them to work, yet they come looking. Eddie Bowie Jr. is one. This is the norm and not the exception. Opening for business smartly is what people want and need. At Lilo's, we initially furloughed all part-time employees. We remained open for takeout throughout the shutdown, losing money daily. Once we established our footing and received the PPP loan, we asked all employees that we could reach to come back to work. Some did, and others did not. Those that did return, we put them to work. We fed the entire staff and their families each Sunday. We fed the community with free meal distribution, over 130 meals, and we offered affordable meals at discounted prices to customers willing to pick up or take out deliveries. It's not enough. We're still losing money. Once the PPP loan money runs out, we could be forced to close if things don't change. Even with concessions from landlords, the takeout model is not sustainable for a business built to be a full-service restaurant. Workers, business owners, and customers must be allowed to make their own choice, whether to work, open a business, or patronize. If they do not like what they see, none will participate. As city leaders, you must do whatever can be done to help the business in town survive this storm. Without it, many of us will not be here in September. I beg you to open the city for business. Vote to reopen the business and allow the business to operate and offer services in the streets and on the sidewalks. The results will be fantastic and will make shopping and dining Lake Worth Beach safer and more attractive for all. More importantly, get people back to work and give the people of Lake Worth Beach a valuable mental break from the reality of COVID-19. David Arm at 212 Iris Avenue, Lantana, Florida, writes, on behalf of the Lake Worth Beach business members of the Greater Lantana Chamber of Commerce, I urge the Commission to adopt option 3 for the phase 1 reopening of the city. Option 1 is too limited and provides relief only a very few restaurants. Option 2 again favors only those restaurants on Lake Avenue, while option 3 will have some effect on traffic due to the street closures. There are still many less cars on the road, especially during weekends. Not only will this benefit the restaurants, but hopefully other retail shops as well if the closures increase foot traffic in the area. All the businesses in the city will consider this money well spent to help reawaken our downtown. We also suggest promoting this as a festival similar to the evenings on the Avenue, perhaps with music, car shows, or other entertainment to draw more people from both city and outside communities. Thank you for your help in promoting Lake Worth businesses. David Arm, President, Greater Lantana Chamber of Commerce. Then Rod Regan writes, 621 Lake Avenue. My name is Rod Regan, part owner with my wife and daughter of Brogues Down Under, 621 Lake Avenue, Lake Worth, Florida. If I understand correctly, a commissioner two are against opening Lake Worth restaurants to 25% as authorized by the governor of Florida. He or they are way out of touch with the needs of the people of Lake Worth Beach. Each one of our patrons are ecstatic that we have reopened with social distancing, our main priority for their safety. We can, under the 25% approved by the state, accommodate 137 patrons with social spacing. I am in favor of keeping open as approved, as we are the people of city of Lake Worth Beach. Also allow tables and chairs to be in city space. And finally, Kevin Knight at 802 Lake Avenue writes, I am one of the owners of Rum Shack. My staff and business have suffered terrible financial losses, as have most of the state and country. We've been extremely diligent following takeout guidelines throughout the last several weeks and shall continue moving forward. We just spent several $1,000s to restock food and supplies to be able to reopen. We lost thousands of dollars of product when we were shut down and had to convert to takeout. 90% decline in sales created a lot of wasted goods. Closing again would be devastating to my staff and business, as it would be the same for the rest of downtown. Not remaining open at this point is just not acceptable. Hold everyone to the safety guidelines that have been put in place, but stay open. Sincerely, Kevin Knight. And that's the end of the comments, Madam Mayor.
Okay. City Manager? Did we have a call-in?
Apparently, that didn't happen, Madam Mayor, so
Okay, thank you.
apologies.
All right, Commissioner Hardy? You're muted.
It has been said that, you know, business owners won't risk their workers' safety or, you know, put their business in any sort of legal jeopardy or exposure in order to make a buck. And, you know, that's not true for all businesses and for all business owners. You know, you don't just the history of people operating businesses and of workers working at them has included really egregious examples of business owners jeopardizing their employees' safety and putting their legal, their businesses in legal jeopardy in order to do just that. So the idea that it's unthinkable that any one of these businesses might jeopardize not only the health of their own workers, but the health of the public by, sneaking and admitting more than 25% of, the capacity of, their restaurants and so on and so forth is kind of ridiculous. As a matter of fact, they have I'm a huge believer in, look at what people are incentivized to do. Folks out there are financially desperate, and what we're believing is that they're going to open up after not having paid probably 2 months worth of rent, after having incurred tons of losses. and that they are just going to follow these rules to the absolute T, even though we have no ability to enforce them, and even though they need every dollar that someone is willing to give them. That just doesn't look, I'm in economics, I have a degree in economics. I'm just looking at the incentives here. That come on. The other thing, look, I appreciate hearing from these business owners. Notice we didn't hear from a single worker, right? So, the business owners, the merchants, on the avenue, they are very clear that they would like to open their businesses and make money. And they are apparently speaking for their workers, because when their workers talk to them, they don't hear that they, feel forced, to come to work. And again, nothing that any of them said makes them an authority on this issue of this pandemic. The people who are the authorities on this issue, the folks who work at the CDC, they told us what we need to have accomplished before we reopen. And I would reiterate yet again that we haven't done that. So they can say, we're ready. We, the business owners, we're ready. Tell me where you got your degree in epidemiology from, because the people who have those degrees are saying we haven't met the criteria. The politicians are saying we're ready to reopen. The epidemiologists are saying here's the criteria, and we haven't met them. So, I hope that this works out well. There's a possibility, a probability that it will not. And I hope we can feel good about the consequences of what may happen if we're wrong. I will not be voting for this. And I really, really hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Did you express that to the county commission when you were there?
I did. And this is just, we don't have the testing capacity we should have. They can't even get a handle on this virus in the daggone White House. What makes anyone think that we can have a handle on this virus right here when in a place where every employee is tested regularly, they have an outbreak where the president works? And we think that around here, we're going to be okay. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. None. But I am on the other side of this vote. I've voiced my objections vociferously. I don't have anything else to say.
Vice Mayor?
Madam Mayor, we're not here to attack our downtown merchants. I can assure you that the workers have been showing up on Tuesdays because they have nothing else to do. They're coming out in the community and they're getting involved to give out food on Tuesdays at our Healthier Lake or CRA and our Feeding South Florida. So the workers are working. They're coming out and volunteering their time in their communities. And I'd like to move forward with the question.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor and a second.
I have my hand up.
Commissioner Robinson, sorry.
Just a quick comment that we are spending a lot of time talking about the restaurants downtown. A couple of weeks ago, I was interested in helping all the businesses with a utility concession of some sort, because all the businesses in the city of Lake Worth Beach are affected. We haven't had that conversation. Yes, the restaurants represent a huge part of the draw for downtown, but I want us to consider all the businesses, and we haven't considered them, but maybe in the future we will.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Commissioner Robinson, if we can bring that to one of the next commission meetings. Right now, it's just on these two items, but let's have that talk. In the meantime, I want to say that not only the downtown businesses, but in my regards, and I think in most of our regards, we're dealing with all of the business owners in Lake Worth Beach. We're not just dealing with the downtown. Those just happen to be the people that spoke during public comment. But that's why I asked about people with their own parking lots and things of that nature, what they could do in those areas as well to help, make sure that they can provide social distancing and also try to, most of the businesses I know are well behind, but they're looking just to break even, at least on their expenses and costs at this point, to just stay alive. And so I appreciate all your comments. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 no consideration for a reversal or
Oh, well, she would have asked that
consequences.
2 seconds ago.
Okay,
Is it as is, gentlemen, who made the motion in second?
I made the motion.
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I'm
Nay.
opposed. I'm opposed to not being able to address the consequences.
Can we add that in the stipulation, city manager, down the road? To check up on them? I'm just saying, to make sure that it has the same requirements as the other one did at the beach. If anyone's in violation of it, that they can be noticed or something of that effect.
Madam Mayor, I'm proceeding with the assumption that if somebody's violating the provisions of our agreement to use this area, that we have the ability to call it back.
Okay, thank you.
Call what
Christie,
back?
is that your, Christie?
Yes, Madam Mayor, that's why I chimed in with this option one. We would pull back the ability to use more city right of way. In addition, under the governor's executive order, both the state Division of Professional Licensing that license restaurants under Chapter 500 and 509 can also enforce the requirements. And of course, PBSO can enforce the requirements, and it's a second-degree misdemeanor. So we do have several mechanisms of enforcement for these measures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm then in agreement with the motion.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2. I'm sorry, 4-1.
Yes.
4-1. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Did we just had another call in? Did anyone see that? Somebody just dinged in.
Oh,
It's an iPhone. One person is waiting. Is anyone? Keith?
So we don't have verification on this user, Madam Mayor, so I can't allow them into this room right now.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, so then moving on, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second?
second.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good night, everyone. Please be safe out there. Put your mask on, wash your hands, love one another, be helpful to your neighbors. Thank you so much.
Mayor.
Lake Worth
Thank
Beach.
you, Commissioner.